The $1 million question when it comes to flood protection.
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast to the protection against heavy rain and flooding by Dr. Flood Andreas Klippe.
So the big challenge is, how can house owners like you and me get a flood-free home? How can business managers like you and me get a flood-free company? And how can public servants provide flood-free critical infrastructure and livable cities?
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood Andreas Klippe. This podcast is for foresighted and proactive people who do not want to shovel the muddy water out of their room while standing in the midst of the disaster.
Therefore, those who design and plan, the architects and engineers, need to construct such buildings and cities, and that even when the entire environment is completely flooded. That is a challenge, and this podcast will give the answers.
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood Andreas Klippe.
Hello and welcome. The $1 million question when it comes to flood protection. That's the topic for today. I gave a subtitle with what shall I do? That was my question. What shall I do? Later I will come back to that. But let's first talk about it, what it means. So, flood protection. Normally people ask for flood protection of a building. So it can be a factory, a shopping center, a large hotel, a subway, an airport, a private house, any kind of building that needs to be protected from flooding, from heavy rain and flooding. And we want something, very often people ask us, we want something automatic without manual interaction, especially from the Middle East. I hear that very often. And that automatically leads you to automatic flood barrier systems. And that generates a third question, how much does it cost? And now we are in the beginning already of all these questions. And in the previous podcast, I think I told something about it. However, the question is always, what do you really need, my dear customer? And are you open to other scenarios? If everything is already very clear because the people watched a movie, a film in YouTube, and then they say, I want that. And they don't consider that this technical solution doesn't fit for their building because nobody was ever checking it. They only watched a video on YouTube, 2 minutes, 1 minute 30 or something. And that gave them inspiration. That is good because they got inspired and they have an idea. But the thing is, if they ask for a quotation right now, they will get a quotation with a price for something that might be completely wrong because it doesn't fit to what they need or what can be installed. And you or they will get a quotation with a price that does not include accessories, no civil works, no additional costs. So, and at the end, you get a quotation that needs to be revised many, many times during a period of months, if not years. The result is what? You do not have flood protection for the next year or years. You are vulnerable for destruction and damages from heavy rain and flooding, and you will pay a lot more than you have expected, including the huge expenses for the damages. That means what you plan to do is not the opposite, but it doesn't come true. It doesn't come true. Why is it so? You thought that flood protection is a simple supply, that your procurement can easily purchase these barriers. It cannot be so difficult. And second, you did not consider all the architectural and engineering work. Third, you did not include any planning in your decision-making process. And that is a result why you don't get a correct quotation, you don't get it is not completely described, and you even don't know which technical solution can be installed one day. So at the end, you don't know anything about it. So what is the solution? I ask you one question first. Would you go on an excursion to the Himalayas, to Mount Everest without a guide? You would not survive. You would never, perhaps you make it to the half of the mountain, but certainly not to the top, and you never come back. Another question, would you build a tower block or high-rise building or hotel without an architect? I'm really sure your building would be a disaster. In third example, in 2024, the world experienced the most expensive wedding of all time at around, some say $600 million and others say $400 million. India's richest person and billionaire Ambani organized the wedding for his son. And he invited for the wedding of his son. And festivities with international stars, weeks of celebrations, large receptions, and meetings with VIPs and the family, all at the same time. And now my question. Would India's richest person and billionaire Ambani organize his son's wedding in 2024 on his own? No, he has hired a wedding planner. That brings me to my conclusion, because we talked about the $1 million question when it comes to flood protection. When complex and security relevant projects are involved, like the excursion to the Himalayas, to the Mount Everest, or the construction of a high-rise building, or the wedding for these rich people, that is very complex. And safety also plays a role, by the way, with all these international VIPs. Then always a professional planner is involved. That is a tour guide, that is the architect, that is a wedding planner. In flood protection, we call this person a project planner, a flood protection project planner. The expense for such a project planner is well invested money, and he or she will reveal the 5 cornerstones of your project. Perhaps you haven't heard about it. So you need a project planning for bigger and complex projects to define the 5 cornerstones. And I start with cornerstone number 2. Number 1 will follow at the end. And then you will understand why I mention it at the end. Cornerstone number 2 is the project planner will define the right technology, the technology that fits, and not the technology that somebody has watched in a YouTube video and that might not fit for your building, your environment, and your daily operations. Cornerstone number 3 are the civil works. What kind of civil works are necessary to install these flood barriers? Sometimes people ask for automatic flip-up flood barriers, and they disregard that there is civil works necessary, that they need a drainage system for that, and so on and so on. Cornerstone number 4 is a timeline. How long does it take such a project? Sometimes the people have an understanding that they buy something, they purchase something out of the shelf. That is whenever we get increase like that from a procurement. And that shows to me that, sorry to say, that these guys don't know what they're asking about. You cannot ask for a complex handmade installation technical product that requires weeks or months of manufacturing, and you expect that it is installed within 4 weeks, including transport. That doesn't work, of course. So that is what the project planner will reveal. He will help the procurement and the involved persons and people and the managers and stakeholders to take the right decisions. So he will define cornerstone number 4, the timeline. That also includes the installation timeline. That is a timeline of the project, but also the timeline of the installation. When it comes to installation during daytime or nighttime, or at an airport, for instance, you cannot install anything during operation time. You can only do that when the airport has shut down. So what is quite difficult in the Middle East because these airports never shut down. But in the Philippines, for instance, or in Germany, during special night times, there is a shutdown. Philippines only inside Manila, in Clark International Airport, where I am located, you can hear all these airplanes coming from South Korea at around 1:20 in the night. It's in the morning hours already. So cornerstone number 5, that is what the project planner for bigger and complex projects will reveal. It's a budget at the end of the day. Now you have a realistic budget from the cornerstone number 2, the right technology, cornerstone number 3, the civil works, cornerstone number 4, the timeline, cornerstone number 5, that is a budget. And how do all these cornerstones, all these things fit together? That leads us to cornerstone number 1 that I haven't mentioned before. That is, the project planner will organize the work amongst all persons involved. The collaboration amongst all persons involved. That is very important because to organize such a complex project is not only that 2 people talk to each other. There are multiple people who talk to each other on different levels. And that is necessary. If not, you cannot handle a bigger and complex project. And that needs to be organized. And that is something what is quite often not well developed in countries under development or in transition, because they are very often not used to that unless they have this international experience already. They have made this experience already. So if your project is a little bit smaller and you already know very well what you want, then there are alternatives to this project planning. You need the technical assessment for one hotel, as an example. So not for 2 or for 3. That requires a project planning already, because then you have different locations, very complex, and that must be organized very well, that everything fits together. So we talk about one hotel as an example, or one factory, one warehouse, for instance. Now a warehouse does not need an assessment so far, but let's say a factory. A factory normally, and a big hotel, there are several buildings. There is parking spaces. There is grassland, green spaces available, and plenty of space, and perhaps slopes, connection to the public sewer, yes or no, and so on and so forth. That requires an engineering assessment. If you know already exactly, and you have one building only, one small building, not a huge complex building, like a 5-star hotel with buildings in the garden and swimming pool area and wellness and so on, or factories. If you have one building, one warehouse, or you want to have one private house, for instance, then you need a technical inspection for one or 2 buildings, where it is only intended to install flood barriers in the openings of the fence or the building. So please don't come up with drainage systems and other things. However, very often these things are revealed during such an inspection, and then you can take the next step and you can investigate in other in other things, like that you suddenly realize, oh, we need an engineering assessment, not only a technical inspection. If you are confused a little bit about the expressions, let it explain like that. The project planner, that is a master of all planning, of all engineering. That is project planning for huge, big and complex projects, with the 5 cornerstones. The engineering assessment is for, let me say, for one building, like a hotel, for instance, for one factory. Then this area will be assessed, and we will check how can the water get in, can get out, including public sewer, drainage systems, and so on and so forth, including the impact of all the neighborhood. And then the smaller planning is a technical inspection. So the big one is a project planning, the engineering assessment is a middle one, and the technical inspection is for one smaller building, for instance, where it is only intended to install flood barriers in the openings. So the money you spend, you spend shall be spent before the project, not during the project, please. Procurements always try to get all information for free before they start a project, or they simply don't know about it because they think it is supply. Flood protection is not a supply. For flood protection, you need somebody who is developing the solution. That is an art. That is like an architectural work or an engineering work to construct a high-rise building. It's the same thing. And if the procurement, for instance, or a company or even the government is trying to do these things on their own, then they will get delays. And these delays will delay all projects and seldom leads to the right budget. So it is like a procurement officer organizing the Himalaya tour to Mount Everest. Or second, it is like a procurement officer building the new high-rise building. So he will do that on his own. Or it is like a procurement officer organizing a VIP wedding. Very strange. It will never happen because procurement shall do something else. They shall purchase the things that are developed by other people. Yeah. Don't do any work that you are not trained for. Yeah? Have your flood protection project developed by a professional engineer experienced in flood protection, whether as project planning, an engineering assessment, or a simple technical inspection. Yeah, in this episode you got the answer to the $1 million question on flood protection. What should I do? And I said before, the question needs to be rewritten. It should not be what should I do? You should call it, how should I do it? How should I do it? Yeah, I hope that these ideas gave you a little bit inspiration, enlightening. And if this flood protection episode has inspired you to rethink your approach to flood protection, stay tuned for more episodes like this. And don't forget to subscribe for more insights from the world of flood protection. For personal guidance, reach out to us or to me. My name is Andreas Klippe. Stay safe and flood free. I wish and hope for you that you make the right decisions when it comes to your personal flood protection. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast channel if you haven't already. Now it only remains for me to wish you a good day. Do something with it. Maybe until the next podcast episode. I would be very happy. See you then. As always, stay safe and flood free. Your Andreas Klippe and the whole Flood Experts team.
That's it again with the new episode of Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood Andreas Klippe, German engineer, book author, and head of the Flood Experts. What can Dr. Flood Andreas Klippe protect for you? Anytime? Worldwide? Contact us or just click through to www.thefloodexperts.de/bonus. Detailed engineering, German quality, safe, flood protection secrets, the secrets you'll want to unfold.
Don't forget, you're only one flood barrier away.
Subscribe to the season, and you'll never be late for an episode.